All right. Well, hey everyone. Welcome to another Filmmaker Spotlight Series hosted by the Golden House Film Society. This series is all about celebrating bold voices in independent film, where we spotlight creatives behind the camera and the stories they tell, because the journeys that brought them here is what got them here. So whether you're a fellow filmmaker, film enthusiast, or just curious about what goes into making meaningful cinema, you're in the right place. So let's dive in today. Um, I'm really excited today because we are welcoming filmmaker Michelle Calloway, founder of Tallulah Films, to our Filmmaker Spotlight series. How are you doing, Michelle?
Hello. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having me, Price. I'm so excited to be a part of this interview. Appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really excited to just really learn about your experience and your journey as a filmmaker. And from our understanding, you're just so involved with the film industry, specifically in the Jacksonville area. So let's dive in.
Okay, what would you like to know?
So you started Tallulah Films as your production company. What can you tell us of what got you started in starting that business, and how did that get you into your journey of filmmaking?
Yeah, so I can go back a little bit in time just to sort of lay like a little bit of a foundation of sort of how I got to that place. I've been working in film since I was 18. I attended Columbia College Chicago. I was a photography major, but I ended up on a film set as an extra for one of my friend's student films. So I became immersed in the world of film. I had no idea what an amazing program Columbia had for filmmakers, because film and photo are often, these very separate worlds, but we kind of intertwine at times. So I just fell in love with the collaborative process. I ended up working as an extra, and then they asked me, hey, do you want to be a set photographer? And I had no idea what that job was. And I thought, hey, that sounds fun. Bring my camera, do behind the scenes, help shoot the actors for the movie posters. And I just loved being a part of this really cool group of people. And I some of the best times that I had in college was actually working on film sets. So fast forward, I continued doing that for the majority of my career. I actually moved out to LA to work for a production company as a still photographer. But as any independent filmmaker knows, if you're on a film set and it's a low budget, you've done every job. So I've gripped, I've gaffed, I've AD'd, I've held a boom mic, I've done still photography, I've done production assistant. I've, helped in so many different ways. And that's really what laid the foundation for, my experience as an independent filmmaker. When I moved to Jacksonville, though, I was not involved with the film community. I was mostly involved with the art world and photography as well. But in 2020, I wrote my first short, and I had no experience really with writing, but as an artist, it was just another medium for me to sort of channel, something that I was working on. And so fast forward a few years, I made another short, and I realized that I sort of had a body of work that I had created. At that point, I had 3 shorts. So I did one in 2020. I did one in 2021, and then I did one in 2023. No, 4. So I had 3 shorts, and I was starting to write. And I thought, these are all shorts. Obviously, most independent filmmakers know there's no ROI on shorts, usually. It's mostly to build your portfolio. And as Robert Rodriguez says, which I just listened to his podcast, I was creating a body of work. That's like his biggest piece of advice, like just create a body of work. So I realized I had created a body of work, and I wanted somewhere to put that work. And I realized I wanted to put that body of work underneath a name. And whether it went anywhere or not, it really didn't matter to me. I just wanted to start to build a brand around the body of work that I had started to create. So if there was an opportunity at some point in time to create a piece or work on a project or write a screenplay for somebody else or get something made that had some serious dollars behind it, I had a foundation. I had something that looked professional. So that's kind of where Tallulah Films started. It really just started out of the need to create, I guess, as a photographer, that's my background, a portfolio of work that had a name behind it and some branding, and you could kind of start to get an understanding as to my creative vision and what type of work I wanted to make moving forward.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And so you were talking about a little bit about you some of this work that you created, and you wanted to find a home for it. So what were some of those films that you had prior to the one that you just recently launched? We won't talk about that just yet, but what were some of the films prior to that?
So prior to the film that is currently in festival circuit, I had Belle, and then I had Between Again, which are both independent shorts that I created. And Between Again is more of a micro short.
Okay, so let's talk about Belle. Belle screened at the inaugural Golden Owls Film Festival, which was magnificent. During our second day, we had a specified women's short category, and also won Best Short at the festival.
Yay!
So, can you tell us about like what inspired the story, and tell us about the approach that came up with the themes for the film?
So what I've kind of started to understand as I've created a body of work is each piece that I do, it sort of informs the next piece. And Between Again was a micro short, one woman voiceover. I made it in a day. It was just this very simple thing that I made. I actually rewatched it today, and I haven't watched it in a really long time. And I could really see some foreshadowing for Belle and really those themes that I was sort of heading on. And I think when I look at the synopsis of Between Again, I realized that I was studying my own internal mental health, my own internal trauma, my own internal unprocessed emotions, my fears, my own limitations, things about myself that I didn't really understand at that point. And so when I wrote, and just to sort of clarify, and I used this wording recently when I was doing another interview, was I look at a lot of the films as I make, especially the short films, as moving poetry. Because a lot of the times when I'm writing, whether it's a voiceover or whether it's dialogue, it's very lyrical. And I lean into that a lot, especially with shorts, because you can be a bit more experimental. We only have a short period of time to sort of create impact. And so there's room to play. So I think Belle was a really pivotal moment for me as an artist, because I was going through therapy. I had never been through therapy, and my therapist recommended writing as kind of a means of sort of processing my emotions. And I think in pictures as a photographer. So I just saw this movie in my head, and I realized that I like the themes of contrast. I like the themes of light and dark, black and white, male, female, hot, cold, up, down. And I liked being able to explore these ideas of these contrasts, like the human spirit. We have both sides, right? We have love and we have hate. We have the sun and the moon. We have the good and the bad. And I kind of wanted to explore that in Belle. And so I visualized the movie in my head. And then I sat down and I wrote it. And I realized that the film was really about myself, but it was about myself in a way where I was exploring my inner shadow, my own demons, the parts of myself that I didn't really let other people see. So it was a way for me to process my own emotions and trauma through my art and sort of figure out who I was in that experience. It wasn't necessarily just about the script. It was about the doing of the project that was actually the most healing part. It wasn't necessarily the outcome. It was the experience. I didn't realize that at the time, but I could see that that's really such a powerful after effect of filmmaking, is that it's really about the process of the doing. And as an actor, I've sort of started to love that experience of the doing and learning along the way and enjoying the process more than trying to have an expectation on the outcome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And so with that process, right, I'm assuming you'd have to have a good team, right? Backing up you in production.
For sure.
So how many did you have on your team for the film?
I think Belle, our crew was probably 15, maybe. I partnered with our director, Farrell Huntley, fairly early on. I had connected with her via social media. She was a director from Jacksonville, but she was currently living in LA, and she was a former dancer. And she really loved the script. She's really the one that pushed me to send it to her, because I was really nervous. And I was like, I've never really done this. I didn't know her that well, and I had a lot of insecurities, you know, a lot of imposter syndrome, you know, giving her the script. And in retrospect, I can see where, you know, I made the mistake of holding on to the work a little bit too preciously. But that's imposter syndrome at its best, right? You're afraid. And so if you show this to too many people and you get too much feedback, if you're not really grounded in the work that you're making because you're new, you may not feel steady, you know, you may waver. And so I sort of was like, I just need to like be very focused on what the vision for this film is. So Farrell came on, and then Farrell was really responsible for pulling on some of our key people. She pulled on, you know, 2 of our producers. We had Tim Driscoll, we had Shannon Green. Nicholas Larini was our DP, who is an incredible DP in Jacksonville. He's currently shooting a feature here with Justin Mann, Justin Mann was our gaffer. Justin Mann is directing that short or that feature that's actually being shot right now, which is really, really great. I'm excited. There's a really good team on there. We pulled in Cliff Stoner for our sound guy, who works a lot in Jacksonville. He's a great guy as well. We loved having him a part of our team. And we pulled in, you know, obviously a ton of actors, a ton of dancers, amazing production assistants. And just this crew really rounded out really beautifully. And I have to thank Farrell for that. And it was an A+ crew. We had people who work professionally, obviously in Jacksonville. It wasn't necessarily just aspiring filmmakers. It was people that had a lot of experience in the industry, whether they were shooting shorts or a lot of commercial work. So I was just really blessed to have those people, you know, a part of the project, because I knew that they knew what they were doing. And I had a very specific visual tone that I wanted to create, only because of my my background in photography, that I knew the type of cinematography that I was sort of seeing. I knew lighting really well. I left most of the decision making up to Farrell, but I still had enough of an understanding to at least be discerning about the team, you know, that we put together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so that distinction between being a photographer and then moving over into a director producer role, what was that transition like?
Well, technically, just to clarify, so Farrell was our director. I just produced and wrote the story, and I also played our lead character, you know, in the film, Jessica. What was that like? Terrifying, but it was amazing, because if anyone's written a film and been on set, and it's kind of an out-of-body experience, because I wrote this screenplay on my living room floor. And then, you know, a year later, I'm standing in a room that I had envisioned in my head with all of these people setting up lights, moving cameras, running lines, setting up craft service, doing all the things. And to me, that was the greatest visual representation of manifestation that I had ever experienced, because I realized how powerful the word was and how powerful intention is. Because everyone was there because I literally wrote words on a piece of paper. And I think that sort of realization kind of blew my mind a little bit. And then I was like hooked. I was like, okay, this is great.
Mm-hmm.
This is why we do this. This is so fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So your newest project is Tallulah Park, and which
Mhm.
actually recently had its world premiere in your hometown at the Julian Dubuque International Film Festival.
Mhm.
What can you share about that experience?
That was a really cool experience. So I'm technically from Waterloo, Iowa, but the Julian Dubuque Film Festival takes place in Dubuque, Iowa, which I'm very familiar with. When I submitted to the festival, I was, you know, kind of researching festivals for the festival run. And I thought, hey, let me see if there's festivals in Iowa. I've been gone for 20 years. I lived in Chicago. I lived in LA. I lived, you know, I now live in Jacksonville. And I really didn't know what what we had going on. And I discovered the Julian Dubuque International Film Festival, and, you know, saw that it had been voted, you know, top 25 like coolest festivals in the country. And I said, oh, this is cool. Yeah, let's go for it. So I submitted to the festival. I was accepted, and they asked me if I would actually submit or show under the Iowa Shorts block. So it was kind of the Made in Iowa series. So technically the film was not made in Iowa, but I told everyone, you know, I was made in Iowa. So this kind of tracks.
That applies.
Yeah, it applies. And so I said, sure. Yeah, absolutely. No problem. I'm just happy to be here. I would love to be a part of the Iowa Shorts block. And I think the coolest part about the festival, and mind you, I had no expectations of the festival. You know, I didn't know anyone who had attended the festival. I didn't even know they had the festival. And I was just so grateful to be there. And the biggest, I guess I'm like kind of emotional because it's like really my whole family was able to come. And that was like something that was so important to me because they have never been able to see my work in person. They've never really been able, like when I was doing photography, you know, they could never attend, you know, one of my photography exhibitions, whether it was in LA or here. And then when I started making movies, you know, they weren't really able to see, you know, my premiere, like my premiere for Belle, my family wasn't able to come. So it was an amazing opportunity to bring my family together, and we all went to the festival together, which I don't think I'll ever forget that experience because it's something to be, and I was more nervous during that premiere than any other festival that I've ever done because one, they have to see my work, which is incredibly personal and vulnerable. And then two, I have to get up in front of my family and do a Q&A, and they've never really seen this version of me. So I thought, wow, this is kind of a little bit, this is a little intimidating, but it all went well, and it was such a beautiful experience, and I absolutely enjoyed showing my film in my home state.
That is so beautiful.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you. That's yeah.
Thank you.
How amazing that is to, especially like you know, as a creative, you know, even if it wasn't just film, you know, having the art, because art is so subjective, right?
It is.
And it's like especially when you're showing, you know, the people who raised you,
Yeah.
you know, what type of emotional state that the film is in, you know, it means so much.
And those themes arise, you know, within the work that I do. So it's difficult because these are things from my past. A lot of the times, the themes that I'm exploring are things from childhood. They are things from my past. So it's incredibly vulnerable to then put that up there, let alone you being the lead character. You know, I play the lead character, Olivia, in Tallulah Park. And so I'm up on screen, and most of my family really hasn't seen me on screen because this is very new for me. Acting, you know, really is maybe only 3 years old. And it's something I sort of fell into. And as I started making movies, I just started, you know, I needed to put myself in them. And that's kind of really how it started. So that was another level that felt incredibly vulnerable, was like, that's me up there.
Mhm. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, even so, like, you know, as filmmakers, when you're writing yourself, when you're writing the characters,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I've also noticed and found that, you know, oftentimes you're putting in the state, the emotional state that you're in at that current time.
Yeah.
We're working to mimic it into the art or the character in this instance.
Mm-hmm.
How does Tallulah Park and Olivia, how does that reflect who you are as a filmmaker now, and what type of themes does it explore?
That's a really good question because Tallulah Park really started with a different idea. It really started with this. I just had this idea of this woman who was on a road trip. That was really the start of the film. And I had this idea of this woman who left home. And it was sort of a reflection of what I ended up doing. I ended up, you know, separating from my former partner. And it was before that had happened. So it was, you could tell there was like an undercurrent of like friction that I was trying to explore, where it was like, I felt like I needed to leave where I was. And everything worked out for the better, just to preface. But I think that was sort of the beginning of Tallulah Park. and this idea of this woman who's leaving, and then she connects with this other character who, again, opposite of her, you know, this male character. He's a cowboy. He's kind of this like rough, you know, guy. And he ended up being played by my friend Corey England, who's an amazing photographer as well. And he just brought life to that character, Malachi. And he, you know, he named the character, and I kind of talked to him about it. And I said, I have this idea, but it's not fleshed out. And I really want you to play Malachi. And, you know, you change her path, but I don't really know what the end is yet. I just know that she's going to meet you, and she's going to be in this state of despair, and you're going to be the guy who gets her going the other way. And then I kind of put it to the side, and then I revisited it, and some time had passed, and I realized that, you know, there was another personal experience that I had gone through that gave me more inspiration to finish this piece. So Tallulah Park is a real park in Jacksonville, and I took parts of another person that I know's story who is from that neighborhood and was able to sort of like weave it through. And I was like, okay, I know where she's going. She's going to this park. Okay, well, the park was like this refuge for her and this little boy when they were little. And he never left, but she did. And she's afraid to go back. And so she's been gone for all of this time, and she goes on this road trip. And you're not quite sure where she's going, but she's pretty much deciding that she would like to end her life. We don't really know that as an audience. I don't really show it, but you can tell she's kind of on the edge. She abandons her daughter, and she ends up meeting that man, and he kind of changes that direction. So she comes back to the park, and it's sort of like this reconnection of like, well, if this guy who looks the opposite of me, who's this sort of vagabond character, can go home, so can I. So it's really uplifting, like, and it is about your inner child. Some people were able to pick that up in the film, but it is a lot about your inner child. So when she goes back to the park, it's empty, and she realizes she needs to go back and get her daughter, and then bring her daughter back to the park. And the daughter is a metaphor for her inner child. So to go and get her and bring her back, and when she goes back, she sees that little boy that is now a grown man with his son. So it's like this sort of really layered, complex story of, you know, healing, generational trauma, mental health. It has a huge theme of place. The place is a character. And then the music is also another character. I did all the music for the film, and that was another piece that I found really inspiring to work through.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Is there anything that you learned from Tallulah Park that you may not have with Belle Isle in the previous film?
I think Tallulah Park was different because we didn't really have a budget. We actually didn't have a budget. We had some money. We had to pay for things. But it was a much smaller crew. We made it really fast. We made it within 2 weeks from kind of start to go. And it was a project that I felt much more involved in, where Belle Isle, Farrell was really adamant that I just be the actress. Like, just come and act and do your thing. And I don't want you to have to worry about the rest of the stuff. Tallulah Park, because I produced it with Dejana Burrows, who also served as our AD. She and I did all the pre-production for it, and, you know, all the location scouting, all the casting, you know, everything like that. So that was a piece that I hadn't really done. And Belle Isle, yes, I was a part of casting, and obviously I gave ideas for locations, but Farrell took on more of that load. So with Tallulah Park, I felt like I was much more involved on the production side, especially because I was financing the movie. I think that was a very different experience. And I realized it's difficult to do all of that. It is possible, but I think I learned a lot from just the production side, you know, which I had experience with production previously, but having to switch hats, you know, can be a little bit weird when you're on set to like be an actor, but then also be answering like production questions and helping people fill out talent release forms.
Sure. Yeah. The business side of things.
Yeah. So there was that, which was sort of weird. But I learned a lot from Belle Isle when it came to the marketing of the movie. And so this time around, I had a much clearer picture of how to market, what I needed to have prepared, what materials I needed. And I just felt more prepared to kind of jump into the festival circuit this time around.
That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. The marketing side, and it's the post production of things, right?
Yeah.
I think it's hard to, as a filmmaker, it's hard to distinguish between the two worlds, because you're as a creator, you're creating the film, the content, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you also have to focus on the business side of things, of the distribution, the
Yeah.
marketing piece after, kits and everything that goes along with that, and then of course the what you receive from audiences and the festivals and stuff like
Mm-hmm.
that. So it's how you respond to it.
Yeah. It's another job, is how I tell people that all the time, filmmakers. I say, once your film's done, your second job starts, which is marketing your movie, which is another job.
Absolutely.
Like, you need to be professional. You need to have your materials together. You need to, make sure you have proper photography to give festivals, your poster behind the scenes if you're doing interviews. I kind of have a whole kit that I put together. I just organize everything, on Google Drive. So anytime anyone needs anything, whether it's an interview, it's a film festival, it's another filmmaker, it's a podcast, whatever it is, I can have everything ready to send. So you're not hunting for all those pieces. But as a business owner, I've pretty much always been a business owner. I had those skills. So I think it served me well when it came to the marketing side of everything. Yeah. And just being really organized, using spreadsheets, running everything on there, making sure your production schedule's lined out. You have all your proper contacts, you have everyone's Instagram handles. You want to tag them. Like, it's little details like that I think make a really big difference on how far your movie goes.
Absolutely. Yeah. I like to think that like entrepreneurship and filmmaking really go hand in hand, right?
Yeah, I think filmmaking is like running a startup.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because every time we're doing a new movie, it's like we're doing a new startup. Like, we're starting a new business. And I have a lot of experience with startup culture, specifically when I lived in LA. I worked on a lot of startups outside of the movie industry, doing a lot of creative work for them. And I could see where those skills sort of paralleled filmmaking in the way from the production side, because I hadn't really done the production side until I moved to Jacksonville. I was just crew, which is interesting because I have like this wide scope of the business. I've been crew, so I know what that feels like. I've been cast, so I know what that feels like. I've been producer. I know what that feels like. So it's really interesting to sort of see it from all angles, but then to understand that at the end of the day, you're building a team, you're building rapport with people, you're trying to make people feel comfortable, accepted, supported, valued. I send a lot of follow-up emails. I want people to make sure as soon as I know something, they know it, especially in indie filmmaking, because people are putting their hearts and souls into these projects, oftentimes for little to no money. So I feel like I owe them the trailer link, the behind the scenes photography, the festival, information, any materials that I make, I can share with them. Any updates that I have, I try to share it with my team, which is why it is, a job, because you're having to then make sure you're giving the proper updates to everybody, the IMDb, making sure you're getting them all those links, everybody's on there. It's stuff like that. It's like the little things that I think matter, especially when people are working in the indie world.
Absolutely. And so for any aspiring filmmaker that may be watching this today, what would be something that you would say to maybe help them get past that fear of, I don't know if I'm ready to start my film or begin writing this script? What would be something that you could like to recommend?
I think we have this misconception, and I think this comes from insecurity, obviously, is that we have to know how to do something before we do it. Like, that we have to be confident before we can say, this is what I am. And again, I mentioned this Robert Rodriguez podcast. If those of you that don't know him, he did Machete, Sin City, Desperado, all these amazing films. Spy Kids. He did Spy Kids. He talks about, and I agree, of not saying I'm an aspiring filmmaker, saying I'm a filmmaker. And that really was something that I realized within the last few weeks I wasn't even doing. And so I listened to the podcast. I was at the festival. I hopped on an airplane. I sat next to a stranger. He said, "What do you do?" And I was about to say something else because I also work in marketing. And, you know, we need to make money to oftentimes pay for these projects until the work becomes the main source of income. So do not be afraid to have a job that pays so you can support the art. But I oftentimes just lead with that because it's easier. It's just so much easier to say, "Oh, I work in digital marketing," right? Okay, great. I said, "Oh, I'm a filmmaker." And it was the first time that that ever came out of my mouth because I realized if I don't claim the thing that I want, words have power, right? Words have power. So if I don't claim the thing that I want, then I don't actually believe it, like on a deep level, that that is something that I can do and be. So I would say my biggest piece of advice is to claim who you are. Do not be afraid to say, "I am a filmmaker," even if you have another job, that's okay. But you know what your passion is and what your dreams are. And so I always say, communicate in a way that empowers you, not disempowers you. But then also, don't be afraid to start, even if you don't know how to do something, because there's so many resources out there that we almost, through imposter syndrome, put these limiting beliefs on ourselves and these imaginary blocks to say, "Oh, you know, I work, you know, my schedule is so crazy. I work this 9 to 5. There's no way that I could do it, but I have this dream." And, you know, we kind of put all these like imaginary roadblocks. And it's like, just do it. Like, Between, again, my very first short that I just rewatched today is 4.5 minutes. I made it in one afternoon with my photography camera that I just rolled video on sticks, did the voiceover, edited the whole thing, have never edited a film ever, added sound effects, sound design, the voiceover I recorded in my son's bedroom on my iPhone, laid it in, like completely ridiculous, had no idea how to do color grading with, I think I used Adobe Premiere because as a photographer, I already had the creative suite. So I was like, okay, I can at least figure this out. You know, did a little bit of color grading, you know, no titles, no, just a short film by Michelle Calloway. And I put it on YouTube and I made a movie in a day. And I look back and I'm like, okay, this is not like a movie I would probably submit to a film festival, but it was a creative exploration. It was a completed project and it took me 2 days to do, really.
Wow. That's crazy.
It's crazy.
Awesome.
And I was so afraid to share it with anybody. I think I took it off of Instagram because I was like because it was really like a personal story. This woman, you can kind of tell, is like really struggling. And I was really struggling. So I could see where I was just channeling my own inner pain through that. But it's visually really interesting. It has a lot of like of my photography, you know, voice in it. A lot of, you know, straight lines, a lot of symmetry, just the way that I frame these shots, a lot of architectural shots. Like I did all the location scouting. I just like found all of these like really interesting locations that I felt like were cool. And it's just me walking by camera. And then maybe I walk back and then maybe I drop something and I pick it up and then I walk out again. You know, it was just this very simple one woman exploration, but I had a vision and I figured it out in the edit. You know, I figured out in the edit what it was, but when I shot it, I didn't know what it was. And sometimes that happens. So
yeah,
I say just do it. Like just start. And is film school important? I think a lot of people, you know, want to know, is film school important? No, I do not believe you need to go to film school in order to be a filmmaker. But I do think you need to be on set. So I was lucky enough that I ended up on set really young, and I just learned on set. But I haven't taken one film class, I mean, other than photography film, which is darkroom, which is different. But I have not taken one motion picture film class in my entire life. So it was all self-taught, self-realized, and just really through experience.
Yeah, those hands-on experiences
Yeah,
definitely go on.
killer.
Yeah.
It's key. And I think the other thing too is the reason why I say just do something, even if it's not that great, is because the other key to really being, in my opinion, an artist that is inspired to keep creating is when you start to develop your own style. It's like you really need to figure out, what am I trying to say? Like, why am I making this movie? Am I making this movie because I just feel like movie making is cool? Or am I making this movie because I have something to say? And one will sustain you and the other one won't. If you have something to say, you will always have a story to tell. But if you're doing it for a reason that you're not quite sure about, figure that out first, and that will fuel the work.
Mm-hmm.
It's what's fueled me. So, I mean, maybe I'm not the norm, but I don't know. I don't know.
No, yeah. So, let's talk about your acting experience. So,
Sure.
outside of film production, do you have other opportunities that you're involved with, or do you have anything else that comes to you, perhaps?
Yeah. So this is so funny, and I've told this story before, but the first, so before I wrote a movie or started actually making my own work, I woke up one day and realized I needed to do something that really scared me. And that I thought about it and I was like, okay, what scares me the most out of anything? And it was being seen, it was being perceived. And I will never forget that day. And I said, okay, what can I do to sort of counteract that? And it was take an acting class. I had never thought about acting before then. Like, really seriously thought this is something I should do, that I want to do. It wasn't even kind of anywhere in the ether.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took this class, terrified, horrible. Everything I did was horrible. I look back at some of the recordings from class and I just was so nervous. And it's sad. Like, it's really sad to see that version of me because she just was so blocked creatively in that regard. But I realized that there was something there. Like, there was some piece of me that needed to be uncovered. And I couldn't flourish in my artistic career unless I figured out what that was. Because photography is great. Like, I had, amazing experiences as a photographer. I've photographed celebrities. I've worked on movies. I've done commercial work. I've done modeling and fashion work. I've done e-commerce. I've done editorial. Like, I did all this really fun stuff. But when it came to me being perceived, that was like a no-go zone. I was like, nope. So I continued to take maybe one or two more classes over the span of maybe like a year and a half. And I just, every time I was like, this is just not, I don't love this process. And it was really hard. Like, and that's why I kept doing it, because it was really hard for me. And then at some point in time, I had put myself in my own movie and I was like, I don't know if I'm any good, like, but I'm trying. So, like, I don't know, but all I can do is keep going. And I had a friend who was starting an agency, a talent agency in North Florida, reach out to me and say, hey, like, you have a ton of experience on set. Like, would you be interested in doing this? I just need somebody who has set experience, who's professional, who shows up, who is reliable. And I said, yeah, like, I guess, like, I've done these few acting classes. I did this short film, I don't know, but I wasn't scared enough to run away. And so I was like, okay, let's see how this goes. So that was really the start of my commercial acting, I guess commercial acting career, because there's not a lot of film that's shot in North Florida and there's a lot of commercials. And it gave me the experience to self-tape, which at the time when I started, it was only self-tape, which I'm grateful for, because if you put me in a room, I think that would be really difficult for me. So I'm grateful. So it taught me how to self-tape. It taught me, how to the audition process, because I'm getting a ton of commercial auditions. You don't get a lot of movie auditions, but you get a lot of commercial auditions. So I really started just teaching myself how to act through these little jobs that I did. And then it just kept snowballing, and I booked some stuff, and I was like, oh, okay. I remember the first print job I did, it was like print and video. I was so nervous. My mouth was like quivering. Like I was so scared, because it was like all eyes on you, like lights, my fake husband. We're at this beautiful bar in Savannah, this whole thing, wardrobe, makeup. I just was like, what is my life? But they're paying me, so I'm gonna be here.
Yeah.
And it just kept evolving. I got another agent back home, so I started going home and doing projects. I started writing more things, casting myself. I started working on other people's short films. I got booked on, my first feature. And so it just kept going. And I guess you could say I do a lot of my own bookings. So I self-book. Currently, I realize that film and television is more film is the direction that I really want to go. It's just, I live in an interesting place where it's just a lot of commercial work. So I'm seeking out a film agent at some point. So if anyone's listening, I'd like to explore that, at some point in time, and be able to sink my teeth into bigger projects.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's the experience like working with a talent agency?
It's a partnership. They make money when you make money. I think people have this perception that it's like a hierarchy. It's not. You guys are just business partners. And if you are professional and you have a great package and you're serious about it, and you approach an agent with, great headshots and a resume, and you have all of your, social medias updated, all your casting, like you kind of have to sell yourself. Like you are a package, you are a product in a way that you're like, here's who I am, and this is what I have, and this is what I have to sell. And I see that as sort of this like symbiotic relationship, especially because I'm an entrepreneur. I get it. I don't have this sort of preconceived notion that it's this like, oh, I got an agent, they're going to make my dreams come true. It's really not like that. It's a partnership, and you're just working together. And that's how I see it. So I really enjoy the process of working with my agent, Agnes, who is the founder of Posewell Talent here in Jacksonville. She's really one of the reasons why, I am doing what I'm doing, is because of her. And I will forever be grateful to her for, entrusting me. And, we sort of learned together, because that was her first agency that she had started. And I'm honored that, she wanted to work together, even though I didn't technically have a huge resume of experience acting. But I had the look that she needed, and it works and I didn't even know that about myself, but I was able to see through the types of jobs that I was, going up for, that, oh, okay, I kind of start to understand like what my niche is with commercial acting, which is completely different than film. Like I don't even put them in the same category. Essentially, when I'm doing a commercial, a lot of times I'm just playing myself, elevated.
Elevated. I like that. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Yeah, you just turn it up the dial a little bit, and you're like, I'm really excited about this thing that's in front of me, and there's all these kids and my fake husband, and we're walking down the street. Like that's really what it is.
Yeah. Oh
But
my
it's
gosh,
fun.
how much fun that must be.
It's really fun. I do a lot of tourism.
That's awesome. Well, you
Yeah.
got to look for it. That's for sure.
It works. I'm like the mom with the kids, and it's just really fun. I really like doing it. That's why I keep doing it.
And so making those connections, right? Like,
Yeah.
You're building your own network through doing that.
Sure.
And I mean that the networking piece is so crucial in this industry, whether it be film, acting, right? Because
Yeah.
it's not about how you do it, but it's about also who you know, because those connections
Hmm.
might get you to the next project.
Well, somebody asked me that yesterday. I was on set and they were like, well, is your agent getting you most of your work? And I said, maybe 50-50. I don't really know. My agent gets me most of my commercial booking auditions, but I self book all the time. And I realize that it is about networking and that I just try to be on set as much as possible because you just never really know whether it's a small modeling job or it's a commercial job or it's a short film or a feature, whatever it is. I'm always trying, even if it's something small. Like I've done tiny roles because it felt worth it to me. I wanted to work with this director, or this project seemed fun, it was near my house, or my location, so it felt worth it to me. And I'm always looking for those opportunities that feel in alignment with like where I want to go, because I realize the more I do it, the better I will get. And I'm not a formally trained actor. I'm somebody who started really late in life. And so I realized that, the only way for me to really learn is to, one, work on my craft on my own, use my auditions as an opportunity to practice my craft. That's how I look at auditions. I don't look at them as I'm trying to book a job. I look at them as I am trying to practice my craft, and this is an opportunity to act. And I am so grateful for that. And to, tell the story of this character in this little minute, minute or two, however long it is. But then when I'm on set, it's also an opportunity for me, to practice my craft, to act, to really like, learn who these people are in these different mediums that I tend to work in, whether it's commercial or film.
Mhm. Mhm. Are there other incentives that you get out of working with commercial work? Like, do you get to keep any of the like the design costumes, or I
Yeah,
don't know if that's the terminology, but
I did a job yesterday and I got to keep some of the products that we were selling. We were doing a photo shoot. Sometimes on commercial shoots, because they will go shopping for you, and sometimes you have to do a fitting, sometimes you don't. But if it's something they can't return, a lot of times they'll just give it to you. It just really depends on the shoot and their budget. But a lot of times as an actor, you are expected to bring your own wardrobe, even to commercial shoots, because usually the budgets for wardrobe tend to be smaller. The wardrobe stylists are always wanting to make sure they cover themselves to, just in case whatever they have doesn't work. They want to make sure they have options and backups, and they know that your wardrobe will fit you.
Mhm. Mhm.
Other than that, I guess, yeah, it would probably just be clothes once in a while. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we'll kind of get close to wrap up. Before we wrap
yeah.
up, what are some lessons learned that you could share for any actors, filmmakers that are listening in? What are some processes that you've taken over the course of your journey that you would like to share for any of our listeners?
Mm, process it. You mean like technically or creatively?
Let's say creatively.
For like upcoming filmmakers, just like
Right.
what?
Hmm.
Hmm, it's a really good question. It really depends on the type of filmmaker or the job that you want to do. So obviously I haven't done every job, but I do think I can speak in terms of being an artist as a whole. And I would say living a creative life is the best thing that you can do. Meaning, you are going to live music, you're going to galleries, you're going to film festivals, you're hanging out with other artists, you're having conversations with people. I think a lot of times it feels like sometimes art can be made in a like in by yourself. Like if I'm writing or something, like sometimes I feel like I'm alone. But I realize that like the more that I can extend myself outward to other artists and to other creatives that are kind of either in the same industry or doing something similar, it influences my work and invigorates me to keep creating. I just try to really live a creative life as a whole and making my day as open as it can be. open to possibility, open to a connection, open to an idea, open to, I try to keep my, it sounds a little spiritual, but like to keep the channel open, to just be an open person, to let the inspiration come in, and to also have an idea of what you want, and to kind of make sure that you have a path of like, okay, I think I want to go here, this is my plan, but then to just let that go and just keep moving forward. We never want to get too we don't want to hold too tight onto anything, but we just want to say, hey, I know where I'm going and I know I'm going to get there, but I just need to keep moving forward and just keep doing like the next thing in front of me so that I can build this sort of trail, and all those pieces will build together. And one day I'll get to the place and I'll go, whoa, how did that happen? Because that's happened to me. I look back and I'm like, oh, how did we get here? It took a while, but we got somewhere, And just keep going. I guess that would be my advice, or what I've experienced on this journey so far.
That's great.
Yeah.
So what's next for you in Lula Films?
Exciting things. Tallulah Park is in festival circuit, which is great. That'll be over the next year. So we've already been accepted into 5 film festivals, which is a great accomplishment. We have our second in-person festival happening in August. It's actually another festival in Iowa. It'll be screening at the Last Picture House, which is an amazing venue that was created by 2 directors who are from Davenport. They built this space for filmmakers. And so I'm honored to be showing there. And then I'm currently working on the script for a feature film. And it will be my first feature. So usually they say do 3 shorts, then a feature. So the treatment is something that is pretty much outlined. I've been sending it around to different people. I made a lot of great connections at the film festival. And it's really in process of being cultivated right now. So my goal is to have the first draft done by August of this year, and start, moving that along, and hopefully making a feature film in the next year and a half would be like a tremendous goal. If I could get this thing going by the end of next year, I think that would be an amazing accomplishment for me. So I'm taking a big jump, but I'm just leaning into the process, and I'm signing up for a ride that I've never been on, but sometimes you just have to go with it, and you have to trust yourself, and I do. So
That's awesome. Well, we're super excited for you, and
thank you.
if there's anything that we can do on our end, please let us know. If anyone is watching and they're interested to reach out to you, what would be the best way to contact you if they're looking to help you on your journey?
Yeah, you can send me a DM at Michelle Calloway is my Instagram, or you can email me. It's hello@lulafilms.com. That's LULAHFILMS.com. If you want more information about the projects I've done, you can go to www.lulafilms.com. You can see all of the films on there that we've worked on and the things that are in development. Those are the best ways to connect.
Awesome. Well, Michelle, thank you again so much for spending some time with us today. And again, if for anyone who is interested to learn more about the Film Society, you can go to goldenowlsfilmsociety.org to learn more. Michelle, thanks so much again.
Thanks, Bryce. Have a great day. Bye.
Bye.